You're watching Inside Automotive with Jim Fitzpatrick.
Despite challenges with pricing, inventory, and ADVs and market fluctuations are now aligning to favor retailers. Here to provide insight into today's market conditions is Kevin Tynan, Senior Automotive Analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence. Thank you so much, Kevin, for joining us once again on the show.
Always a pleasure, Jim.
Sure. So can you elaborate on today's market conditions? What trends are you seeing out there?
Yeah, so I think, there's the old saying, and actually my father used to tell me this, where there's confusion, there's profit.
Yeah.
And I think what's happening is at the manufacturer level, we're coming out of a very dynamic period, right? For the better in terms of undersupply, which drove prices and margin higher and really strengthened the industry. And we're sort of coming off of that. And now I think what the manufacturers are seeing and lacking is another catalyst, the next catalyst, so to speak. So, when you look at where the industry is right now, we come off this period, prices are record highs. Truck mix is mostly tapped out. Electric vehicles aren't really the answer to much of anything, never mind profitability.
Right.
So you have the manufacturers looking at the landscape and saying, oh boy, we're kind of in a spot here.
Yeah.
And I think the advantage is that for the retailers is that like, hey, we've seen this before. We've done this for a century plus. We do sales, we do distribution, we do after sales. So that part of the process can, I think the manufacturers can really lean on the dealerships more. And this is not just the legacy automakers and the legacy brands. I think when you look at the pure play EV companies that are really struggling with profitability, they're also struggling with distribution. You look at even Tesla example, in their first quarter, they delivered 89% of their output, which is the lowest since the beginning of the pandemic when there was no distribution in the first quarter of 2020. So I think all these brands, even if you're doing only EVs, you need distribution scale, you need sales scale, you need after sales scale, repair, maintenance, parts. And that system is already in place with the franchise dealer base. And I think you're going to start to see not only the existing legacy automakers, but some of these new pure plays kind of turn to that and say, help us out here. We need to move some metal. And there's nobody better at that than you, or more experienced in that than you.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, no question about it. And they've been waiting for that call, haven't they?
Yeah, I mean, and if you look at it, and using Tesla as the example again, Lucid and Rivian were kind of the other side of it, where they just couldn't deliver their output, and your cost of goods is through the roof, and your revenue per unit is really through the floor because you can't deliver what you've built. So you've paid to build it, but you can't collect the revenue for it.
Right.
And that's a model that's okay in terms of Tesla as the example when you're delivering 98, 99, 103% of your output.
Right.
But if you get to, if the locomotive stops, all the cars crash into it from behind.
Yeah. And
on the other side of that, now you have all that excess inventory on your balance sheet as a manufacturer.
That's right.
You have all that SG&A in your income statement, right? Instead of, because you think you're going to make that money down the road. Tesla in its service and other business has lost $1 billion over the past 10 years at the gross line, right? Where you look at a dealership, they're making 55, 60% gross margin in that business, because this is what they do.
Sure.
So yeah, I think that they've probably been waiting for that call. And I would even argue, Jim, that looking at it from the other perspective, it's almost the dealers that are going to look at this and go, man, this is a really great business for us. There's not a lot of gross margin in these vehicles, so maybe you're getting involved more for that down the road parts, service, that after sales portion of it. But I don't think you're going to find a ton of gross margin in the new vehicle sales, which is been proven, or the used vehicle side of it. I think it's going to be getting in position to be in position down the road, when these things enter the sweet spot of repair and maintenance needs.
Sure. Why do you suppose these companies have chosen to go this route? Because it seems like to go the franchise route is such an easier way for these so-called disruptors that are coming into the marketplace. It just seems to be, I mean, it seems like the legacy companies have paved the way for these newbies to come in and go, oh, you guys like franchising, and franchise dealers like new opportunities. I mean, if you turned around and said, hey, Tesla's now going to franchise, there would be dealers lining up to become a Tesla dealer. It'd put it right next to their Benz store, their Lexus store, what have you. And the same holds true for a lot of the others, Rivian and Lucid and what have you. So why do you think they choose to go this route?
I think they believe the hype that, dealers are smarmy, with hands in your pocket at every turn, without really realizing the downside or the difficulty in doing it. And I just did some analysis, and you'll see it as we do the speaking tour this summer. Mm-hmm. When you think about price flexibility, right? And the analysis I did basically said, look, if you took a world in which everybody paid MSRP for their vehicle, it would have been just in the past, since 2016, since the record volume year, it would be something like $220 billion additional payout from the consumer to the manufacturer or to the dealer for paying MSRP. So everybody thinks you're getting a deal because now maybe it's more transparent that you just see a number and you click on it and you're paying that number. But ideally, and we've done surveys that look at, people do actually want to haggle because there's money to be saved. Mm-hmm. So if you go back prior to the pandemic, when there was an oversupply of vehicles, the average consumer walked in and got $2,400 off the MSRP without blinking an eye.
No, right.
And then there was 1 year, 2022, where the industry averaged over MSRP. Yeah. And I calculated that out, and that came to be about $7 billion over MSRP. So you've had $200 billion worth of savings, and there was 1 year that you were $7 billion over, and then the very next year in 2023 it was back to $9 billion in savings for the consumer. Yeah. So I think the consumer is believing the message that it's more cost effective or transparent or easier to just click buy. But you're saying like, okay, well, just add $2,400 at an average to that number. Actually, in March, it was $1,400 was the average discount. $1,454 was the average discount in March. So it's like, okay, well, if you want that click buy, here's your extra $1,500 that you're paying as of now. And they go, oh, no, we don't want to pay extra, So I think that you're going to start to get this message out that is really this is where the consumer is going to get some price flexibility, is at the dealer, not from click on the internet and pay the price and, Zelle your payment in or whatever. Yeah. So I think there's some misconception about the process, and people just generally rail against dealerships as not liking what they have to go through, the time it takes to do it, feel like there's an extra fee or charge around, in every sentence of the contract, and they get tired of that and just say, just I don't want to know, how the sausage is made. Just tell me the price and I'll pay it.
That's right.
And I think that's a lesson that dealers can learn, is that the consumer will pay, what you're asking, just make the process better.
That's right. I agree. How are retailers adjusting their EV inventory and sales strategies to meet shifting consumer demand right now?
Yeah, I think I was actually just writing it and submitted it. I think where we're at now is that there was that price flexibility in EVs, mostly handled at the retailer because there wasn't a lot of margin in them anyway. And I think now what you're getting is that's losing traction. And now the automakers are jumping in with incentives that were much more aggressive than they had been before, whether it's leasing, subsidizing the residual, or cash on the hood. The manufacturer is now getting involved just to make, and the numbers are actually mind-boggling. Even from a discounting perspective, when you look at the average transaction price in March, it's actually the lowest it's been since about 2020. Yeah. In a while, it was actually below 47,000 by the way we measure it, which hadn't been the case in a while. We were pushing up towards 49 at the end of 2023. And I think that's part of that that issue, right? Is that prices are record high, mix is super rich,
Yep.
all trucks and SUVs, and to my earlier point, I think that's where the manufacturers are going to turn to the dealers and say, we need you to be able to sell $49,000 things. That's right. To the consumer and be able to service them and deliver them and all those other things.
Yep.
Because we're sort of at we're at the end of some runways here where you need the catalyst, and I don't think the manufacturers can carry that by themselves.
Kevin Tynan, Senior Automotive Analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. I really appreciate it. I know that our viewers and subscribers get a lot out of your visits here, so thank you so much.
Always my pleasure, Jim. Great to see you.
You too.
Thanks for watching Inside Automotive with Jim Fitzpatrick.